מגפת הקורונה הביאה לשינוי דרמטי בחיינו, המאלץ אותנו להסתגל למציאות חדשה, מקומית ועולמית. שמי עידו אהרוני ואני מרצה ליחסים בינלאומיים באוניברסיטת ניו יורק, ויושב ראש פורום צ'רני לדיפלומטיה חדשה. באמצעות סמינרים וסדנאות דיגיטליות ופרונטליות, בשיתוף עם אוניברסיטת חיפה, הפורום מעניק מיומנויות חדשניות להתמצאות במרחב הבינלאומי בעידן החדש. אנחנו פורום אינטרדיסציפלינרי עם מרצים ומומחים מהשורה הראשונה, והמשתתפים מוענקת תעודה רשמית של פורום צ'רני ואוניברסיטת חיפה. כעת אשתף טעימה מתחום התמחותי, עלייתה של הדיפלומטיה החדשה.
No diplomacy. That's the big question of the day. I'd like to share with you very, very briefly my own definition. When I joined the Foreign Service, in the Israeli Foreign Service, you have to go through a cadet program. It's a 2-year program. I never had a dream to become a diplomat. In fact, my dream was to become like my friend Brett Burns and Jack Baxter here, and later on Michelle Ochayon will be here. I wanted to be a documentarian, but I ended up becoming a diplomat. Towards the end of my cadet course, I was told by Human Resources Department that there's a new executive that was just appointed to a very, very important job in the Foreign Service, and he would like to meet with me, some sort of a job interview. I said, okay. I walked into his room. He was on the phone. He completely ignored me for about 30 minutes, I'm not kidding. While he was on the phone, apparently he was on the phone with the foreign minister at the time. His name was Shimon Peres. And after he was done, and he started talked for another 30 minutes about his vision for what Israel has to do with Gaza and what Israel has to do with this and with Israel. And then he asked me, so what's the story with you? Are you, I said, well, I just said basically 2 words, I'm available. And then he said, okay. I left the room. I get a phone call from the head of human resources telling me, well, what's your magic? I said, what are you talking about? He said, this guy fell in love with you. He says you're the most brilliant diplomat he ever met. I said, I didn't say a word. I just listened to him the whole time, which is really, in essence, diplomacy. The ability to listen, the ability to understand, not to be transactional. Don't approach people only when you need them. Build relationships exactly when you don't need them. Because when you need them, they'll be there for you. It's all about relationships. It's all about the ability to absorb and to learn and to be curious about the other. Someone told me, you don't win a relationship, you build a relationship. And this is one of the biggest lessons of diplomacy. So, about new diplomacy, let me just set the record. When you Google new diplomacy today, this is what you will see. You will see definitions that speak about the non-centrality of government, how non-governmental organizations are now becoming more and more important. And this has been the case since the beginning since the wake of the Cold War, really. And that was the classic definition of new diplomacy. I would like to offer to you a much more inclusive definition of what is new diplomacy. But first, let's look at the traditional tasks of diplomacy. So the diplomat was expected to be a communicator, to collect intelligence, to represent his or her nation, to be able to conduct negotiations, to provide services like consular services, and to manage crisis. These are the classic assignments of diplomacy. And when we spoke about diplomacy, we had 2 different definitions of diplomacy. One was very high-level policymaking, right? Like Kissinger. When we think of a diplomat, we think of Kissinger. But let me tell you the truth. Even Kissinger was never Kissinger. In other words, there is no such diplomacy. This is called policymaking. The reason we call it diplomacy is because we don't understand what diplomacy is really all about. Diplomacy is a profession. It's not an occupation. It's a practice. People have to be trained to become diplomats. Just by the fact that you deal with diplomatic materials doesn't make you a diplomat. It means that you're dealing with policy issues. The second definition is something that more relates to popular culture. When we say to people, you are so diplomatic, we're trying to tell them 2 things. First of all, you're very polite. And secondly, you're probably not telling me the truth. What is diplomacy? The classic definition. The art of letting someone have it your way. Or telling someone to go to hell in such a way that they ask you, when is the next bus leaving? These are all famous definitions of traditional diplomacy in popular culture. But the point is that the information revolution really changed everything for us. Look at what the information revolution did. It created an information overload, an unprecedented access to volume, ability to self-design. Our reaction as human beings is anxiety, tribalism. We're trying to look for simple solutions to highly complex problems. Look at Brexit. Look at the Mexican border issue. The building a wall is a beautifully simple solution to a highly complex problem that needs to be studied. Old traditional diplomacy is inadequate. We know that, and we have plenty of evidence. What's required, and this is my definition, is a quick shift from a model of advocacy to a model of marketing. From government to people, right? Let me give you 3 examples. If diplomacy in the past was all about the external world, today we know that diplomats have to bring into consideration also domestic audiences. Why? Because the internet is eliminating the importance of national boundaries. If you're a diplomat in New York and you posted something in English on your website, someone in Australia can be affected by it as well. So territory is no longer that important. The second thing, traditional diplomacy was largely programmed and designed to deal with nations and governments. Today, the most important unit, social, economic, and cultural unit in our lives is the city. And we know that 75% of world population will live in urban centers within 30 years from now. New diplomacy has to bring into account the importance of cities. And lastly, the skill set has to be different. Rather than being able to negotiate or advocate or represent, you have to have great managerial skills, great organizational skills. You have to have a sufficient level of digital literacy. And above all, you have to understand, live and breathe marketing.
רוצים לשמוע וללמוד עוד? אנא צרו קשר עם פורום צ'רני לדיפלומטיה חדשה ב-www.charneynewdiplomacy.com